Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Last time we had a debate on what we termed dead capital. Today we are back to discuss the same subject, but from a totally different perspective. And on the set with me here are
Tom Odongo
and
Kale Bruto.
And I am Patrick Adolwa. When we had the podcast last time, we ended up asking the question, is dead capital a real concept, or is it a concept too soon pronounced? And this evening, we would like to go a step further and look at how many different ways are available to us to put what is considered to be dead capital to good use. And perhaps you can start us off, Mr. Odongo.
Yeah, thanks. The last time when we discussed dead capital, I think we did highlight that we are talking about properties that are not designed or purposed for generating revenue, or incapable of generating revenue, or incapable of being used as collateral for one to capitalize on their value. And we said that yes, these particular these conditions exist in both urban and rural, but there is a way in which this can be unlocked to create value and give opportunities for wealth creation, and that is what we want to discuss today. I think that first of all, I think that why do these things happen? There are two areas that I think we can use to explain this well correctly, if you may. Central Province had land registration right from I think before even independence, and much earlier than everybody else. And you could see the way it is developing is different from places like Nyanza, where the land registration took place much earlier. And that is why there is a problem of comparing these two areas in terms of one having dead capital or that they are competing in investing in dead capital. So if we understand it that way, then we would be able to understand then what can you do to unlock dead capital. I think one of the things that must be done to unlock dead capital is, first is, are all the land where people are building palatial homes registered and have proper ownership documents? If land registration is a problem, land registration can easily make a lot of properties in those rural areas to remain dead capital. Because two things can happen. They can either invest in diversifying land uses within the properties so that they bring in activities that will generate income, revenue, and that revenue can be saved so that the person can multiply the capital.
Mm-hmm. But you're looking at it a little bit more stringently than I would, because when you go to registration and so on and so forth, I mean, the people putting up these palatial homes at some point do not really think about it from this point of view. So they are looking at it from a very social point of view. They have land, and which they perceive to be rightfully theirs. And they can do whatever they like with it because it is freehold land, and they choose to make investments in a big palatial home, notwithstanding all those legal issues around land registration and so on and so forth. But before we come back to you, what is your perspective on this? Because we're just saying, okay, last time we were here, we saw the phenomenon around palatial homes, which the social media invariably described as potentially dead capital. And we said, no, that pronouncement is premature or even unfair, patently unfair. So what do you do with it, even if you're not looking at the whole land registration regime and all the other things that would make sense if you're looking at land as an investment which can help you generate capital?
Yeah. So with that debate, I think from where we last left off, it seems like there are two camps, two schools of thought. There are the people who believe that due to the cultural practices that they hold, or the societal goals that they have, that having dead capital is something of a necessity to them. And so then the other school of thought where we are trying to see how we can be able to flip this dead capital to be something that can be productive for the members of that particular region. So for example, let's say you better serve building a fish processing factory in Nyanza instead of building a hotel. Is it something that we can consider that this has a higher level of maybe satisfaction, or maybe can able to improve other people's lives more than you building your palatial home? And so I think that is a conversation where we're never really going to be able to make people from this camp jump to this camp, because there's always reasons why you would have this option or the other. So what makes sense for the people of a particular area?
Yes, but we are coming from the perspective that dead capital has originally been conceptualized as things that you do for a social end, okay? And not necessarily for a business purpose. And therefore, people would tend to look at that as bad investment. Okay, in fact, that's where we're coming from. Some people are cynical about the propensity of certain people to invest so much money in what would be called social, considerations. Yet they had the opportunity, perhaps, with the kind of investment involved, to do something else of a business nature. But that's the choice they made. They made a choice to do something like a palatial home. And really, at this point in time, all we want to do is make a point about what the possibilities are, debate about what the possibilities are, because this is already fait accompli. This has already happened. The investment is on the ground, and the palatial homes are there on sometimes on very huge tracts of land. And they present different possibilities and opportunities for extended use, or for alternative use, and so on and so forth, so that they don't remain fallow over large periods of time, and so on and so forth. If the owners of these properties, notwithstanding the land registration and land regime, perhaps, would love to use these facilities to generate some income, what are some of the things that they could be thinking about? What are some of the possibilities? And that, to me, is one of the things that we perhaps may contribute to this debate about dead capital or not.
I think let me first of all come back to clarifying 2 points. One, there are two dimensions to this. One, there is a policy dimension. Policy conditions certain properties to be dead capital. There's also cultural factors that influence decisions that tend to direct investment towards dead capital. So policy can also unlock even properties that were originally decided on or based on the cultural norms, and so perform social function to become life capital. So one of the things I think is one thing that you can do is this. First of all, is diversifying land uses. I think is a very simple one, and I've seen it happening in very many areas, including Kiambu here, whereby you make residential as a support land use to other economic activities within the home, and that, provided those activities would be able to generate revenue, and that revenue is capable of being saved. This person can save the revenue that he gets there and then multiplies. Then, though it is a home, then it is now not a dead capital. But also, it cannot be a dead capital. It can also be a life capital, by simply capitalizing on the value, and that value is invested. But then you shared something with me, where that value, I extract the value either through using it as a collateral, and I do something else that generate revenue.
Okay, I think you're making the point about the possibilities to turn around what looks like dead capital to very active assets.
Yeah.
And I also hear you to make the point that there could be certain considerations or constraints, I beg your pardon, that would make it difficult for one attempting to make good what is currently considered to be dead capital to work, to give returns in terms of revenues. And one of the things is the social system around this capital, these assets. Okay, for example, depending on where you are in Kenya, there are quite a few cultural practices that may make it difficult for you to turn around your palatial home and put it on the market, as a business. And you would have to overcome some of these social structures and constraints. And then, secondly, you've also alluded to policy, land use policies, for example, county bylaws and so on and so forth, and legislation and policies that might restrict the use of agricultural land for any other purposes. Those could be constraints, and it is important that those are also considered when you are looking to turn these properties into perhaps income-generating activities. And I think all these are valid positions to take. Yes?
Yeah. I guess now the question is, how do we get to a point where this becomes a matter of devolution working in favor of converting this dead capital to live capital? Because now I think the next step is that, okay, we have these administrative units. They have all certain responsibilities, the people to provide economic growth for the particular regions. So if I was say governor and I have all this free land, or maybe I'm looking at debt capital in my county and I see like this maybe a big problem. How can I incentivize people to change their ideas about this debt capital?
Do you really think it's a problem? The owners might not see it as a problem. I think I see it more as an opportunity than a problem, because if I build my house, I have arrived at my destination as an objective. Okay, so I cannot problematize it, but I can say that it is a facility that is underutilized, because maybe I'm there once in 3 years. Okay, so it has more potential than the potential that has been given to it at the moment. Okay, so it doesn't become a county problem per se. It becomes a personal. It becomes a concern about how ourselves as a country and as communities, how we invest. How we use our resources, and that is why people are talking about it. And they're saying you could have used this money for alternative investment, objectives. But the truth of the matter is, I can choose to put 20 million shillings in a palatial home in a rural area, and I'm good. I have reached my destination as far as my personal needs are concerned, because I'm talking about personal gratification. But we are saying, this is not a term that, this is not an issue that can be trivialized. We are saying that even though at the moment some people have dismissed it as mere dead capital, we are saying indeed there are opportunities. Indeed there could be instances where people can actually use these things as, these properties as productive assets beyond the gratification that was initially intended as an objective for doing these things. And there exists a lot of latitude in that space for people to be able to say, but we can do something else with this. We can convert these things into 3-star hotels. Okay, we can have them as retreats. We can have them as wellness homes, and so on and so forth. Is it feasible that these things can happen?
Yeah, it can happen, but I just want to follow up what Caleb was bringing in. I still think that there is a level to which counties can also play a role. For example, if you are a county that is increasingly seeing more and more people putting their capital in these non-productive assets, you are seeing inflow of capital coming into your area. Do you have any blueprint that has got very, very clear indications of the investment opportunities that are within your area, that people can just look at it and then see that this is what is happening? Mm-hmm. That can be a very, to me, looking at just the way you mentioned it, I think that there is an opportunity for counties to capitalize on this phenomena, to redirect attention of these people not from just focusing on things that give them access to social power, but other things that can actually, regenerate.
I find this very ironical.
The economy, but for what is already existing, for what is already existing, there has to be. I think some people think that there need to be a mindset change in mindset.
Yeah.
To be a little bit focused on entrepreneurship, and they have been trying to compare certain regions and thinking that
no, these comparisons are unfair because of historical reasons.
Yes. Certainly they are. Yeah. So what I think is that there are two. Why I think change is possible. There are two factors that are presenting this. One is that most part of the Western Kenya has invested heavily on human capital, and that human capital has moved and is transforming the places. For me, the greater opportunity is in the counties taking advantage. But in terms of changing things is where Patrick was trying to, actually was more eloquent than putting this correctly, that the constraints must be removed, one of which is actually the land use regulations. Land use regulations are so stringent that if you look at the level of the bureaucratic process that you need to undergo to restructure these palatial homes to something that can generate income, it takes a lot of time. The other thing is whether you have anything that you can lay your hands. Like now I'm here and we are discussing this, I can lay my hands, I can just pull something from the net and see, oh, there are these opportunities that are happening. This is the demand for Airbnb in this particular place where I have got a chance. This information that people can use very, very quickly to turn around things. But we have seen things like homes that have been turned into Airbnb. We have seen that some that are turned into local, pubs.
And I think this is indeed for me that's the direction.
Cottage industries. Completely. I mean, there are places, homes that now you find that the level they have upscaled their poultry to things like 10,000 units. That now is now no longer residential. It looks like it is more of.
But hold your thoughts here. I like where this is going, but I'm a little bit worried about the mention of the county because as we speak now, you are the ones who are introducing the dimension of the county, but the county itself is not projecting. Okay, the county is not speaking to this phenomenon at all. Okay, because the counties are submerged. They're taken up by their own county systems and county management and county administration, to the extent that this unfolding phenomenon doesn't seem sometimes to be open to them. Okay, it doesn't because for me that would be the eye opener to the county administration, to the county government. But there's something phenomenal going on in our territory, and we need to latch onto it and find a way of working with it, because it means that our citizens, our residents are actually productive and resourceful. But unfortunately in this country, we do not see citizens as productive. We see citizens as consumers of services.
Yes.
We do not see them as the potential that the counties have to generate revenues and wealth. And therefore, we do not create systems that actually tap into these investments that perhaps, manifest themselves as palatial homes. Okay? And many people who are investing in these palatial homes are actually elites from these counties.
Yeah.
But the counties also fear them. The counties are not comfortable with these owners of palatial homes. The counties are much more comfortable with other people other than their best investors. And that for me is problematic. And so what the county is sometimes likely to do is to make it difficult for these people to turn these places into all these things that you're talking about. And I'm playing the devil's advocate here, because you may want to do something, then all of a sudden you find that you've invited the county into your space and into an adversarial relationship needlessly. You see the tragedy?
Yeah. I think what we must agree is that supposing these investments were actually not dead capital, what would be the economic impact on the ground? Certainly it would be phenomenal.
Well, I mean, let me paraphrase. Yeah, I hear you. But let me paraphrase.
Yes.
If we can extend the use of these properties
Yes.
to include other activities.
Yes, exactly.
Because they are certainly not dead,
Yes.
and their owners are entitled
Yes.
to have developed them for their own
Yes.
objectives. And not for us to be the ones to determine whether it is dead or live capital.
Exactly.
But we can convince people that there is indeed a way in which this facility can be extended to include other activities that have an overall good effect on the revenues, on the economy of a county.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that requires a certain level of revolution in people's mindsets of how they view their city homes versus how they view their properties back up country. Because in reality, the place that you stay in is probably in Nairobi or wherever your work environment is, and that should be ideally your home. You should want to build that place up, maybe own property, and this is where you continue to grow whatever it is that you have, instead of building a house that you maybe visit 3 or 4 times, maybe 10 times at the most in a year. That does not make sense to me, because this capital, if you, let's say you bought a piece of land in Kilimani, and then you bought a piece of land in let's say Baringo, for example, the value of this property in Kilimani would definitely be higher 10 years from now than the one in Baringo. So
but you're not building this capital that is in the rural. You're not building it for value. You're building it for other reasons. They're social.
But that is why I feel
there's no value, such value as you would like to believe that is built around this, because that was not the objective. Okay, there is no resale intended. There is no turnover in terms of intended here. But we're saying now that the countryside is replete with these kind of edifices, what is it that can be done? We're not talking about future investments in palatial homes. We're not talking about a phenomenon that already is in place. These homes are already there and they could be used. And so what are the opportunities? Notwithstanding what you've said, yes. I mean, people are going to begin with urbanization becoming even more, real. I mean, people are going to have to people will make choices increasingly. And there are people who, with the county system happening today, there are people who prefer to live in nice rural places. These are not going to be poor places where people will be running away from. I mean, people were running away from rural places during the colonial, era, because the economy was structured in such a way that people had to raise taxes and they had to go to urban places in pursuit of employment so that they could pay their hard tax, for example. So it was a system that was deliberately calculated to achieve a certain outcome. Okay?
But it's also an area of public policy interest, I think.
Absolutely,
So.
absolutely. That's the opportunity.
Yes, it's an area of public policy interest because I think Ndemo estimate this debt capital as $50 billion, $50 million.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bitange Ndemo.
Ndemo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
A huge number.
$50 billion because it is in trillion in terms of Kenya shillings. What should interest government is that if government can create incentives and support system that can convert, can enable, as an enabler, to facilitate conversion of these and intensification of land uses, diversification of land uses that would make this to be productive assets. Government itself actually benefits from revenue, taxes, and the areas are regenerated economically. Is something that actually, but I agree with Patrick that where counties are, that is not where action is going to start. It has to start from national government seeing this phenomena as an opportunity, because again, one thing you cannot reverse is individual wants to build palatial homes for social power. I mean,
you don't ask government for permission to do that.
They don't ask that. And again, it is a choice that
the choice you make.
Yeah. But what government can do is that what incentives are there that government is putting in place to make people take advantage of, so that they be able to turn around these things into productive assets, which they can, and then at the same time be creating more opportunities. And I think for me, opportunities, government can create opportunities by simply putting infrastructure in certain places.
Exactly. Now you see, you can imagine. I mean, so all of a sudden, 10 years down the line, you realize that something is going on in rural places. There is quite a phenomenal change in the landscape. There is wealth beginning to manifest itself. And then you must, come to the realization that something is happening. Your people are productive, so you have a very productive asset. Okay? So now you're thinking, how do I make sure that this continues? What is my role as a county? What is my role as a national government? But this is not how we are configured in Kenya, because when the moment we come to the realization that development cannot be brought about by government, development can only be brought about by the citizens of a country. And when they make the first effort and government sees that effort, the only thing that government can do is to enable that and that development to happen even faster. The tragedy is that quite often government or those who are in positions quite often make it more difficult for people to do these things than to enable these things. And we have to be candid about it.
In fact, what you find, Patrick, is that those areas that are undergoing this transformation, the first reaction that would come from the counties is to impose new restrictions.
Absolutely.
Try to control them. To control them. And the control is to limit their choices. That is what they do. But now when we are looking at this transforming dead capital into active capital, then you really need to roll back some of the government control systems and replace them with more incentives that can stir up, people doing things differently. Which is possible, which is possible because we have seen places where this is being done. But and I think one of the most important thing is that what should arrive in such places should not be control first, should be infrastructure. infrastructure, the things that should come first. And you would find that things like, for example, internet presence in some of those, this changes a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Yes, you bring electricity, you bring, there is internet presence, the whole places change. You can turn a whole palatial home into a business center.
Absolutely. Anything you want.
Anything you want.
As long as the infrastructure for communication is right, the infrastructure for mobility is right, the tax incentive is right, environment is right. You can change a lot of dynamics by actually just enabling these things to happen at a county level. And these are not even functions of national government. These are actually county functions. Okay? So when counties begin to see their territories manifesting this kind of things, it is up to them to begin thinking about a policy framework that can enable these things to happen, can enable more revenues in these places, can free people to come back to their counties, because the one thing that we've not done is seen people as the biggest assets the counties have.
Let me tell you, these promises, now as we discuss it, I see it. It promises even to create very, decent jobs that are not the kind that we are glorifying today, but don't pay people, just lead people to more poverty. This can actually generate very, very, decent jobs. An opportunity that should have been taken, actually. Looking at it now, I feel that the people who started this debate on debt capital, much as it was more to profile, but
I saw a video of a lady driving around, I think in Nyanza, showing houses, showing how they are very good roads, but literally no industry.
Yes.
Well, but industry, industry is a difficult term to deal with. It doesn't mean factories.
Yes.
It can mean that all these things that we are looking at as debt capital are put to alternative use that has respectable revenues. And that's not extremely difficult to do. So it can be tourism, it can be holiday homes, it can be wellness homes, it could even be retreat centers, for a whole range of things, like conferencing. And I'm not just talking about ordinary conferencing, VIP conferencing, for example. And these homes could be sold to tourists out there on the internet for them to come and experience Africa. And this is exactly what we should be looking at. We shouldn't have a stereotype about what is in industry and what is not. Because I think those are some of the pitfalls that we encounter. And we're looking at a phenomenon and we're saying that if this is indeed the trend in a particular region, that's what perhaps ought to be developed so that every region brings out its best potentials.
This is the riches they have.
This is the wealth they have.
The wealth they have. They can use it to improve the economic conditions in the areas and make the area much more productive. Because there's a huge capital tied in inactive
assets.
Is huge. So the potential is there. When people are calling debt capital, they're just talking about the opportunity cost that is associated with this kind of investment. And certainly we have to agree that there's a lot that can be done. And Patrick, I agree with you that counties are still very far from looking at their population as asset. They still look at them as consumers of services.
They look at them as political assets.
Yes, political assets also. Because empowering them, just with what we are talking about, empower them through policy reforms, empower them by using infrastructure provision as incentive to change these, empower them even by, I've seen that in Masai land they have transformed the quality of the genetics of some of the cattle they keep,
Yes.
simply to much more superior quality. Those are things that can be done and make people be interested in. Agriculture can be made smart. I mean, there was a time that was part of the former president's rhetoric. That you can make agriculture smart so that people can take this and also the other things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, that was our prescription for dead capital. I do not know whether that resonates with some of your thinking, but we do sincerely believe that there is a way in which what is currently considered to be dead capital can be used to generate revenues, not just for the individual investors, but also for the counties, and also to create opportunities for employment for those populations that are in the counties, and that counties must consider their policy formulation to include some of these phenomena that is beginning to manifest itself as perhaps a manifestation of the potential of the people of these counties. And perhaps that's the best way to make dead capital work for us.
Sure.
Don't you think so?
True.
Yeah, I agree.
And thank you so much. That's all we have for this evening. See you in our next episode.
Good evening.
Thank you.